football. The good news is college football season is here. I hope you're as fired up and jacked up as I am to get this thing rocking and rolling. On today's podcast, I'm going to dive into week one's biggest game, starting with the marquee matchup. We're going to talk a lot about number 1, Texas Longhorns, and the number 3, Ohio State Buckeyes. Then I'm going to give you some insights into what I'm calling the Tiger Bowl. Number 9, LSU, and number 4, Clemson. We'll touch on number 6, Notre Dame, going to number 10, Miami down in South Florida. And then, of course, we're always going to touch on my Alabama Crimson Tide as Alabama kicks off the season in Tallahassee against those Seminoles down in Florida State. We're going to give you an insider's coach's view and perspective. We're going to break it down, and very importantly, we're going to give you something different, really a different perspective than we feel you can get anywhere else. Just think about all the massive changes to college football over the past couple years. I mean, you've got conference realignment, you've got the expansion of the 12-team playoff, you've got a significant NIL impact, and a really significant impact from the transfer portal. And like it or not, it's all here and it's here to stay. And I truly believe this season will be a season to remember. And that is my favor to ask you right now. Go ahead right now and hit subscribe. It's simple. You just got to mash the button. And then share it with someone, and always hit the like button and leave comments. We want to exchange information, good and bad, whether you agree or disagree. Leave comments, share the podcast, and hit subscribe. It really does mean a lot to us. It allows us to build our audience and continue bringing you this unique coach's insider's perspective for free. So hit that subscribe button right now. Now, first up, the game that's got the entire nation pretty hyped and certainly has our attention, if you're a college football fan, is number 1, Texas Longhorns at number 3, Ohio State Buckeyes, set for Saturday, August 30th in the Horseshoe in Columbus, Ohio. We get to start the first Saturday off with the Fox Big Noon kickoff with that game. Number 1 versus number 3, a rematch of last year's semifinal game. I'm telling you right now, that's the way to get the season started. So get you some breakfast, get you a drink, get settled in for that 12 noon Eastern kickoff. It's truly a non-conference, mega game. And this game will definitely have a major impact on the conversation throughout the season, and certainly on the playoff picture come December. It is the first time in program history that Texas opens a season as the preseason number 1 in the AP poll. Think about that, the long storied history of Texas football. They've never started a season in the AP poll as preseason number 1. Then Ohio State, of course, is ranked number 3, as I mentioned. But according to DraftKings, the Buckeyes are favored at home up in the shoe by 2.5 points in this game. Another really interesting point, if you're looking at DraftKings and the betting odds, is that both Texas and Ohio State are both equally favored to go on and win the national championship this year, both with the exact same odds at plus 550. 5-1 odds, each of them, to win the national championship. While number 2, Penn State, is in between them in the preseason rankings. They are at plus 700, 7-1 odds to win it all as a natty contender. But at 4 o'clock Eastern on Saturday afternoon, there's going to be one program hyped and out of their mind in a positive mindset, and then there's going to be a program feeling significant pressure. So who's it going to be? Will Texas be hyped? Or will Ohio State be hyped? Will Texas be feeling the pressure, or will Ohio State start the season off feeling some pressure because of a loss? My opinion is Texas has far greater pressure on them than Ohio State would if they were to lose. Why do I say that? Because going forward, Texas's schedule is literally no joke. And if Arch Manning doesn't deliver and they lose this opener, they'll feel the pressure. Believe me, they will in Austin. And it gets really loud, really quick around that part of the country when Texas is not performing well. And after the opener at Ohio State, those Longhorns will have 3 games that they can dominate on their schedule. But then after those 3 games, that would be 4 games. The opener plus the 3 they should dominate. Then game 5 gets serious. They get on a plane and they head down to the swamp to play the Florida Gators. Then following that Saturday, they got to go back to Dallas and play Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry game. Oklahoma will be a solid and good football team this year under new offensive coordinator Coach Arbuckle, who brought his quarterback with him from Washington State in John Mater. These guys coming from together, the offensive coordinator and the quarterback from Washington State, I believe is going to fix the offensive struggles that Oklahoma had last year and make them a much improved football team. But after that, after they go down to the Swamp and play Florida, then they come back for the Red River rivalry game against Oklahoma. They get a little bit of a break in the schedule, but then they go to Sanford Stadium, and they've got to play on the road again in Athens against those Georgia Bulldogs and Coach Kirby Smart. And of course, then they have to wrap up the year against Texas A&M. Some good news about that, though, is they get the Aggies at home in Austin this year. It is now Arch Manning's time to take over at QB1. Will Manning carry on the winning tradition of the Manning family? Will he validate coming out of high school as the #1 overall recruit back in the 2023 class? Will he be in the Heisman hunt? Will he lead those Longhorns to an SEC championship and then ultimately to a national championship? Before any of that can be figured out, he must first take these Longhorns up into the shoe and beat the national champion Buckeyes, who knocked them out last year in the semifinal game, beating them 28-14 in the semifinal game last year. And believe me, that's not forgotten in that Texas locker room that the Buckeyes ended their season last year. The bottom line is this: there is a lot of pressure on this young man at quarterback. Arch Manning has to feel the pressure. The question that will be answered in the horseshoe is, how will he handle it? Well, we'll get to see at noon on Saturday. But the good news is, for Manning and for the Longhorns, is that Texas defense is legit. They have some dudes, and I mean some dudes, on the defensive side of the ball. I'm talking about Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, Anthony Hill, Malik Muhammad, Michael Taft. These guys are legit. Texas has been an elite football team and a national championship contender for years now, in recent years anyway, because they are stacked on defense. Their secondary has the highest coverage grade of anybody in the country last year. When you go back and give that group of players a grade from last year, they've got the highest grade of any secondary in the country. And I know Manning's going to get all the cameras and all the spotlight and all the flash, all the credit and all the blame, but it's their defense, which is a top 5 defense in the country without a doubt, with those dudes that are going to go on to play on Sundays in the league that they have on that roster. Get these stats right here. Texas has a top 10 rated defensive line group in the country. They have the #1 rated linebacker group and the #1 secondary group in the country. Defensive line, linebacker, and secondary, all top 10 rated, top 1 rated linebacker and secondary group. I think that means they are one of the top defenses overall in the country, along with Alabama and Clemson this year, in my opinion. That should be your top 3 defenses: Texas, Alabama, and Clemson. This will give that young offense and Arch Manning an opportunity to kind of get his feet under him, to kind of catch up, to grow and mature throughout weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4. If that defense can just hold them in there as they get that offense clicking under Archie Manning. If they do that and hold serve at Ohio State, and they give that offense an opportunity to catch up and grow and mature over the next 3 games before they roll down into Florida and play those Gators, I'm telling you right now, man, they'll be on a roll towards a national championship, but it will certainly not be easy for them. On the Ohio State side of the ball, they lost 14 players to the NFL draft this past April. And by the way, that is tied for the second most ever for a school in one draft to lose 14 players in one draft. And on top of all of that, on-field talent that went on to go play on Sundays that they lost both of their coordinators. And those are key coaching positions, both offensive and the defensive coordinator. Chip Kelly on the offensive side of the ball went to the NFL, is now at the Raiders, and the defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, left for Big Ten rival Penn State because of a contract issue he had with Ohio State. They are replacing a ton of talented players and their top 2 key coordinator positions this year. Now, who replaced them? Well, Matt Patricia will take on that defensive coordinator role, by the way, who has 3 Super Bowl wins coaching with Coach Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. So he knows how to coach defense. And on the offensive side of the ball, they promoted someone from this staff, Brian Hartline, to be the offensive coordinator. But we can't forget the Buckeyes also have the 2 best players in college football on each side of the ball. This is a pretty amazing thing. I believe Jeremiah Smith at wide receiver and Caleb Downs at the safety position on defense are the two top players on each side of the ball in the country. And an interesting side note, by the way, I know the Downs family. I coach Caleb's older brother, Josh Downs, who now plays wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. And I remember little Caleb, out when I was coaching Josh, I remember little Caleb running around as a little guy at his brother's practices and games. They are a great football family, extremely talented young men. And Caleb is like having an experienced coach on the field with you out there. Young man gets it, and he can play ball. We all know this. And Jeremiah Smith, some people say he's ready for the NFL right now. People thought last year as a true freshman, he was ready to compete at the NFL level. He is that talented and understands the game in that type of way. And I believe he really is the best wide receiver in the country. So between Smith on offense and Downs on defense, that's a pretty strong foundation to build the rest of your team around. It really gives you an advantage to do that when you have two players like that on both sides of the ball. As a matter of fact, I cannot find another instance where the top two players in the country played for the same team. I can't think of one. If you can think of a time anywhere in college football, recent history in my lifetime, where one team had the best defensive player and the best offensive player on the same team at the same time, I don't think you can find that. But Ohio State has that luxury and that advantage this year. But the unknown and the biggest question will be, how are they going to be at quarterback? Because they are also breaking in a new quarterback. The starter that they have chosen is Julian Sain, who was at Alabama for a few days until Nick Saban announced his retirement. Then he transferred to Ohio State. He's a former five-star recruit himself and spent last year behind Will Howard on their national championship run. So this is one area that needs attention for the Buckeyes. They need to figure out the offensive line. This is probably their weakest position group on the team. Last year's offensive line graded out at only 69.3. So when you graded that group last year, they were 63rd in the country. They also lost 2 first-round picks off of that group to the NFL, and they lost a Remington Award-winning center off of that group, along with those top 2 draft picks. This season, all 5 offensive line projected starters for the Buckeyes had a sub-70 grade in 2024. So this is an area with Julian saying that they've got to get, got some issues there as they break in a new quarterback, and they have this offensive line that has got to get things together with an inexperienced offensive coordinator. Even though he was on the staff, this is his first crack at calling the plays and leading the offense in Coach Hartline. But if Coach Hartline and Julian Sain will, dial up the plays to get the ball to number 4, I think that can solve a lot of their issues, right? Of course it can. The other game that I want to talk about in week 1 is the Tiger Bowl. The Clemson Tigers against the LSU Tigers. My man Dabo Swinney recently said this, and I'm going to quote, "I've had one undefeated team back in 2018. We were the first 15-0 team in history of major college football ever. And I think we're going to be the first 16-0 team. It's a race to do that," unquote. And that's a big statement from Coach Swinney. I mean, the odds of Clemson going 16-0 are not good, right? That is a tough thing to say. According to FanDuel, they're plus 410 to finish the regular season undefeated, but they are plus 1,100, 11 to 1 odds to win the national championship. So is it doable? It is doable, but man, it's not going to be easy. That's a big claim that he thinks he can take this team and be 16-0 in national championships when it's all said and done. I think Clemson's got a great football team. They are returning a ton of starters, and they are going to be ready in Clemson, South Carolina on Saturday night. So for them to go undefeated, they're going to have to beat LSU to get the season started. And I will also point out that if they can do that, if they can beat LSU, then they've got Georgia Tech, going to be a good football team, South Carolina, their in-state rival, of course, is a good SEC quality football team, maybe SMU, Florida State, and then North Carolina on the schedule. Who knows how that experiment will pan out in North Carolina, but they don't have an easy road, but it's not an impossible thing to think that they can't go through the regular season undefeated if they start with a win against LSU. But with all that talent coming back, 16 starters, 8 on each side of the ball, they'll be ready to roll because their quarterback is maybe, if not the best, top 1, 2, or 3 quarterback in the country, and then Cade Klubnik. He had 36 passing touchdowns last year. That's second most in program history. Add 7 more rushing touchdowns. He had 43 touchdowns last season. And the offense averaged 34.7 points per game last year. So Klubnik can play, man. The kid can certainly play. So along with one of the better defenses in the country, it's not crazy to think they might not could pull it off, but we'll see. Because once they get through the ACC championship game, if they're still undefeated, they're going to have to beat 3 of the best teams in college football in the playoffs to make it to 16-0. And we all know that that game Saturday night to start the season against LSU, that Clemson is only 2-5 record versus SEC teams over the last 3 seasons. So they're going to have to get after it. And LSU on the side of the ball, trust me, they are happy that Garrett Nussmeier came back to remain QB1 down in Baton Rouge. When he decided to come back to the school, they've got plenty of talent around him at the skill position to make things happen. And that offensive line has got some questions. They need a little bit better running game than they had last year, because their run game, quite frankly, last year stunk at LSU. They were dead last in the SEC in rushing. They only had just over 1,500 yards rushing last year, and that was significantly worse than the second worst team in that conference. They had the second most passing attempts in the country last year at 612 passing attempts, because their run game was so horrible. I want to compare that. If you had over 600 passing attempts last year, and that 2018 team with Joe Burrow, they only had 219 passing attempts during that season, to give you some perspective. And again, this is mainly due to the run game being bad and the defense at LSU the last couple of years being horrific. So they had to put the ball in the air to stay competitive. They were in shootouts almost every single week. But they went out and attacked the transfer portal, and they're hoping that they have upgraded the defense and they've got that thing turned around. And if they do, they're going to be a really good, solid football team. But in my opinion, again, just my opinion, I'm not a Brian Kelly fan. So you guys in LSU down in Baton Rouge, that may make you mad, I don't know, but I don't personally buy the Brian Kelly thing. I know he's a solid, good football coach, but I don't think he's a championship winning football coach. Just my opinion. But he has a chance to prove me wrong with the talent and the roster that he has at LSU this year. We'll see. The other 2 games I'm interested in are number 6 Notre Dame and number 10 Miami. It's going to be a good matchup to watch. And of course, the Alabama Crimson Tide rolling into Tallahassee against Florida State. Now, the Notre Dame-Miami game has both teams in the preseason top 10, so this is another marquee matchup to get the season started. It's also a rivalry game to kick off the season. Notre Dame is replacing a lot of key players from their national championship runner-up squad last year, including their quarterback, Riley Leonard. But Miami is also replacing the number 1 overall draft pick in their quarterback, who is now playing in the NFL. They have had a lot of setbacks during spring practice as well at Notre Dame and Miami. Notre Dame should have a strong defense returning with good length and speed and depth under Marcus Freeman. But Miami is ready to get their season started and prove that they are going to continue to be a dominant program. They have announced that first game should be an orange out down at the Hard Rock Stadium, hoping to set some home field advantage for them next Saturday. Then, as always, again, as I mentioned, Alabama Crimson Tide. So if you listened or watched my first episode 1 podcast, we went into the Alabama Crimson Tide in detail and really previewed what they needed to fix, what they needed to correct to get things going this year. So go back and watch last week's podcast if you want the breakdown and detail on how I feel the Alabama Crimson Tide will be much improved this year and the things that they need to fix. But the word is coming out of Tuscaloosa that they've addressed and corrected the problems and the issues that I pointed out last week. And I think this could be an Alabama team that is slightly overlooked a little bit, but it certainly has the talent and the ability to make a national championship push. So again, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. We're going to be coming to you every week. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the podcast. Help us spread the word. I sincerely appreciate you checking us out, and thank you for listening. So go ahead, mash that subscribe button. And we have a saying around here, make plays, not excuses. Enjoy the games, and until next time, God bless.